Hi, this is Dheeraj Raina. Welcome to the first session of the virtual book tour for the book my wife, Dr. Uzma Yunus, wrote, Left Boob Gone Rogue, My Life with Breast Cancer. Truth be told, she should be the one doing a real book tour, not even a virtual one. Unfortunately, cancer took her away from us, her family. And when I say her family, I include you, her readers, in her family. Because of the way she wrote, she took us all, including you, on a journey where we were next to her. We feel as if we are next to her when she discovers that there is something amiss with her breast, or when she's getting an MRI, or when she's at her aunt's funeral, or when she's thinking about death and about ending chemo. Uzma makes us cry, she makes us smile, she makes us giggle. She draws upon her experience and as a physician, or rather I should say her training as a physician, to describe her experience of being a patient. Like all doctors who train in Pakistan, she too went to medical school immediately after 12th grade. She, as a result, being a physician was a very important part of her identity. It was long after I had finished medical school that I learned that the word doctor, or the Latin root of the word doctor, actually means teach. And I do think that physicians are trained from the very get-go to be both healers and teachers. And she saw herself as both. She saw herself as both a healer and a teacher. That's why today, for the first session of this virtual book tour of Left Boob Gone Rogue, I picked passages from chapter 32, Letter to Oncology Trainee. I picked those because in this chapter you clearly see the balance that Uzma strives to achieve between the identity she had chosen, that of a physician, and the identity that had been more recently thrust upon her, that of a cancer patient. Through this chapter, Uzma teaches all clinical trainees how to think about patients and their encounters with patients. So I'm reading from the third paragraph of chapter first. There I was, sitting on the exam table for the umpteenth time, drenched in the misery of metastatic breast cancer and the confines of its incurable boundaries, when you barreled in. When a student walks into my exam room and calls me Miss Yunus, it tells me that she did not read my chart. You did try to pronounce my foreign name right, and I give you credit for that. But you addressed me in a way very few people have addressed me in my lifetime. I tolerate Miss instead of Doctor just fine, unless it is paired with a bizarre sense of familiarity and an extra dose of feigned friendliness. I could tell the appointment would be interesting. Your smile could have worked like sunshine, but it was more of an unwanted glare in my eyes. Artificially summoned cheer and familiarity is toxic in an oncology clinic. It's more suited perhaps at the beauty counter of a department store where something concrete can be offered up and accepted. An oncology clinic must dispense amorphous things like hope and care, and it must do so with actual interest in and humility for the patient. I could sense your quest to elicit all of my symptoms and cover your entire checklist. Just a gentle reminder for you and anyone in healthcare. Be genuinely interested and the diagnosis unfolds in front of you. There is no magic like empathy in medicine. If a patient feels connected, she will take your hand and lead you to the most intimate places in her story. But to do that, you must unload your sense of authority and step inside. The two of you must belong in the same world for the length of the appointment. A healthcare provider cannot simply stand at the door between sickness and health. No, she or he must transcend into the world of heartbreak and disability to know the patient. Has anyone explained to you that a patient's exam room or a hospital room is a sacred space? Someone who is ill has lifted all of the curtains and opened all of the doors to let you in. The least you can do is not run over her with speed and callousness. Your breeziness and lack of good eye contact telegraphed you had an agenda. Then Uzma goes on to show why patients sometimes feel justified in withholding information from doctors that they perceive to be doctors and other healthcare professionals that they perceive to be unempathic or insensitive. Clearly, when a doctor and patient are in a room, there are two agendas that are at play. A successful appointment is the harmony of those two. I was hit in the head by your agenda to get every piece of information you needed, which put me off so much I never gave you any information. That much control I have, and I felt compelled to exert it. As a cancer patient, I have seen my share of students, medical, physical therapy, CNA, nursing, and it's rare for me to be annoyed. After all, I remember my training days too. It was the graciousness of others who allowed me to examine them, draw their blood, or share their story that made me the doctor I am today. I am forever grateful to have had the privilege to be a part of their story. That is what I want you to learn. Today you have the white coat on and I am in the gown. Yet you should know that it is I, the patient, who is giving you this opportunity to learn. So when you sit on your spinning stool and shake your dangly earrings, be mindful that you have entered my space and my life. I am vulnerable. My clothes are folded on a chair and I have sit in a flimsy gown that barely covers my scarred body. I have lost control of my life to cancer, and the fact that you're trying to exert authority over me merely aligns you with my cancer instead of with me, the patient. This was not the only time that Uzma had a less than optimal interaction with a trainee, but as you can see from what we just read, she really did feel very strongly that she had an obligation to help trainees learn, just as other patients had helped her learn. The question then is, why didn't she say anything to this particular trainee at that appointment? And she goes on to say that in the concluding passages of this chapter. Yes, I'm a patient, and today I denied you the privilege to be part of my intimate story. I wish you luck in your training, and hopefully what you did was all the result of grave inexperience. I wish I could have told you all this in person. I would have if I believed that you came to listen. Sincerely, Dr. Uzma Yunus. So even though she's describing the experience of a patient, she signs it off as Dr. Uzma Yunus. Let's move on to a question. I had asked on Facebook what some of her readers might have wanted to ask her if Uzma had been on tour. So I'll pick one question for today. Annie N asked if Uzma knew of the impact that she had had on her readers. I believe she did, and I say this because of the way the planning for her funeral went. Traditional Muslim funerals usually involve burying someone within a day, within 24 hours of their death. And Uzma had been involved with me and the funeral home in planning her funeral, and she gave us broad guidance. She didn't get into the little details, but she gave us broad guidance. And one of the things that was really important to her was that she really did not want to be buried within 24 hours of her death. Well, not that it was possible, because she died in the middle of one of the coldest spells, and the ground was so frozen, and it would have taken 3 days to thaw the ground enough to bury her. But she had said that she wanted at least a 3-day gap between her death and the funeral, and she had said that ideally she would want to be buried on a weekend. And she said because she wants to make sure that people who didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her while she was alive and wanted to do so before she was buried, those folks got a chance. Because I'm assuming it's going to be friends and family members who are going to come to the funeral. Well, she said, no, people are going to want to come. At her funeral, there were many folks that I did not recognize. These were people that I had never met. These were people who came up to me and introduced themselves as folks who had only known Uzma through her writings. There were other folks who we had met only once, but they had befriended Uzma after following her writings for a while. So they were primarily online friends or Facebook friends, but had had at least one interaction in person with Uzma. There was a teacher who had taught her in K through 10 who came. There were faculty members from residency who came, who hadn't seen Uzma in a decade or longer, who came. And there was even one faculty member who came and said that she had just discovered an hour before Uzma's funeral that she had passed away, and she wanted to make sure she was there. So I think just the way she thought about her funeral, just the way the guidance that she gave me about her funeral tells me that she knew of the mark she was leaving on the world. Thank you for joining me on this first session of the virtual book tour for Uzma's book, Left Boob Gone Rogue. If you haven't read it, please read it, and if you have read it, please write a review for it and on Amazon and recommend it to other folks. Really appreciate that. I want Uzma's book to get to as many readers as she had hoped it would get to. Until next time then, good luck and goodbye.